Not one title is really good for describing what I do. I'm a cartoonist, I'm a designer, I'm an illustrator. I work primarily in comics and also advertising. I started in comics, or at least that was my great passion when I was in high school. I started pretty simply. I was a fine art student at a New York university for about a year. And after about a year, my patience ran out and I dropped out. The curriculum was designed to teach students fine art as they perceived fine art, as the faculty did. And they looked down their nose at illustration and cartooning. So there's only a limited amount that I could receive in terms of an education there. And I spent about a month creating a portfolio that I took up to Marvel Comics. And they started to give me work. The experiences of working with Marvel and DC vary with the company and even with the editor I happen to work with. When I started to work with Marvel, the atmosphere in the office couldn't have been better. I think I was really fortunate to hit them at a good time. And there was a sense of optimism, and yet it hadn't grown so large that it felt corporate. It seemed like most of the editors up there, despite all the difficulties they faced day to day, were having a generally good time. DC was always a little bit more corporate. You always felt people were on a shorter lease and taking it very seriously. I'm pretty convinced that artistic talent is passed on through the genes. My father was a commercial illustrator along the lines that I do, but strictly in advertising. He died when I was pretty young, so I really didn't get to know too much about his past and his work, so there's no direct influence there. My mother was an abstract expressionist, very much a product of her times in the 50s. I only started to get serious about my drawing towards the end of high school, and my mother was pretty much hands-off. She didn't really make a comment one way or another about my drawings. I think that might have been intentional on her part, with this fear that if she pressed too hard, maybe I would rebel, and she left me to follow my own instincts. I think growing up in New York influenced my work indirectly more than anything else. Because I was in New York in the younger years, there were museums accessible to me, and my mother, being an artist, would take me and my sister there. They were designed to allow you to sink into that world, and I think that really helped initiate a love of the wild, of animals. That's always been a strong theme in my drawing. The other way it influenced me is simply that when I started to get interested in comics, New York was the center of comics, which meant I didn't have to move to New York to work for Marvel. They were basically a short subway ride away. That world being so accessible to me made it easier for me than it was for a lot of other artists. What inspires me? The work of great artists, both in illustration and in the fine arts world, and the natural world, just virtually everything that you're likely to see outside of a building, but mainly I'd say the non-human life on this planet. I don't have a favorite piece that I could name. It really becomes something of a blur when you've been doing commercial work a long time. You don't really get a chance to reflect too much on the work you've done. You're just constantly trying to keep up with the work that you're doing now. So I don't try to calculate what kind of reaction I'll get, because I don't think that's possible. I try very much to satisfy myself. When I turn in a piece of work which I don't feel is good, I beat myself up for it. I really hate that feeling. Give myself a big pat on the back when I actually do something that I like. My best known piece, it was a Spider-Man story I did for Marvel Comics, and prior to that, I don't think my name was terribly well known. I was having trouble. When that job came out, it received a great deal of attention, far more than I expected it would receive. And after that point, finding work came a little bit more easily. And to this day, there's still people who will come up to me at conventions and mention that job in particular. I've had a show at the Kennedy Museum. That was about a year ago. And I felt that was a great honor. They don't usually do popular culture type of artwork. They usually have, they have an international reputation. So I felt very honored to have my show up there. And in, I think it was 2010, the Ohio University Press published a book of my work, and I wasn't expecting anything like that. About 1990, I had started to visit Athens, and I started to realize that there was something inside me that really still related to the kid I was at 5, watching Tarzan movies on the TV and wanting to be in the woods. And Athens was the perfect place for that. When I moved to Athens, I branched out and started to do any number of different commercial assignments. I did a couple t-shirts and a couple commissions. I think the advantages of working freelance over a bigger company is you don't have to play by their rules. That can be pretty stifling. Working freelance is really difficult because you have to be your own business person. It means finding the work and dealing with the clients, and when there's a contract, working out contracts. I've been tossing around an idea for a number of years of doing some self-publishing, and I've actually lined up a very, very talented designer. All the material is done. If everything goes right, it'd probably still be about a year before anything saw print.